Hey girls, hey. Hey boys, hey. It's Mama Beauty's here. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Haven't seen you in a little bit. I took the last 2 days to try to take some time for me, but the other grandma, who was out of town last weekend, is having a little beef with my daughters and her fiance, and so she didn't get to keep the baby this weekend, so I ended up getting her more, and which I love, than I usually do. Usually I just get her on Sunday nights, and this last 2 weekends I've been able to keep her 2 nights. I'm actually going to go over there and get her after this video, but I know that I've been neglecting you guys, but trust me, I have been busy. When my granddaughter's here, she's 1 year old, and she is walking and just into everything. Plus, I have to constantly watch her with the dog because the dog will go underneath her feet and knock her out from underneath her. And so I just have to focus when she's here. So I wanted to hurry up and get a video out before I was preoccupied again for the next 24 hours with her. And plus, I homeschool my son every day. So that's 6 hours a day that I have to focus Monday through Friday. And if we choose to have a day off through the week, then that means Saturday or Sunday has to be sacrificed for those 6 hours. So that's the best part about homeschool, is you can get to doctor's appointments through the week. As long as the work is done by Sunday night at midnight, then you still get credit for it as if you did it when it was expected. And so we thoroughly love that, because Gage sees a psychiatrist, he sees a family doctor, and he sees a autism doctor. So we stay super busy. Plus, we try to squeeze in the Y or the trampoline park, because he doesn't really get the social aspect of school. So we want to make sure that he is not one of those homeschool kids. You know what I'm saying? So, and also I wanted to break from the Watts case because I read the book in 2 days, and it is very good if you are not aware of this case and you really want to know how things went down in what order. I do highly recommend the first half of this book. The second half is hard to understand. If you don't care about maybe why Chris could have done what he's done, or maybe a diagnosis that he has not gotten because he refuses to ever get an eval, then the end of that book is really good for that. It breaks it down. It helps you understand why his brain works the way it does and how he could possibly have these certain diagnoses. But the author also admits that you're not allowed to diagnose somebody that you have never met before, and that she is just going on what she's seen and what she knows. So by any means is she giving him a diagnosis. She did put a lot of disclaimers in there. She cited all of her resources in the book, which is awesome. And then we all know that Charlene Cadle is in a bunch of trouble for plagiarizing. Her book ended up being an exact replica, we all know, of In the Garden, Confessions of a Serial Killer. Hold on 1 second. Let me let my dog out. And Howard is that author's name. And she gave a statement to Critical Cray, and we all saw her turn her back on Sherilyn immediately. So Sherilyn doesn't have as many friends as she thought she did, and now this is what happens when you try to strong arm a grieving family into having a word in your book. So this author of this book was able to write her entire book without having to speak to Cindy or to the Ruseks. She left them alone. And so that is the way that she should have done it. Now it is coming back to bite Sherilyn in the butt after everything that the way that she went about it. She wouldn't have had so many people that were disgusted by her had she not went on Dr. Oz. I was still giving the woman the benefit of the doubt, but when she went on Dr. Oz and said, no, I did not give them a copy of the book so they could brace themselves, they got the book when the public got the book, because I called them when I first started writing. It was 5 months after the murder. 5 months, you guys. Cece contacted the author of Letters of Christopher contacted the Ruseks only 5 months after the murder and asked them if they wanted a word. And because they said no, a year later, she would not give them a copy of the book because they said no. And that is on the Dr. Oz episode. If you don't believe me, go fact check. So moving on, it's just been so much consumed. We still have all these pages of discovery to go through, and I plan on doing that right away. My next video will be a discovery video, but I wanted to kind of change directions here. It's still talking about murderers. I wanted to explain to you guys why these things intrigue me, and it's not like I was just born and I decided that I was fascinated by murder. That's definitely not the case. I wanted to explain to you how out of my 41 years of life, almost every single point of my life, I have been commingling with a murderer throughout all 41 years. Okay. So I want to give you guys that timeline and explain to you their murders. And so you can understand maybe a little bit of my mind or my why or my obsession with true crime, right? One, I wanted to be a lawyer when I was younger, but I wasn't born into a wealthy family. I wasn't willing to get that much in student loans because your butt is owned by the government pretty much. Once you get those loans, I got student loans to get a business degree, and then I was going to transfer that associate's to Western Carolina and get a business administration and law degree because they're the only school around this area that will let you minor in law and get my bachelor's in business and minor in law. Well, the money to do that, to go to a 4-year college is insane, you guys. And I just got up to here in debt whenever I was going to school just for my associates. And I was only 7 classes away, and my dad died. And my dad died. The nurses called me and says he's went to sleep. He's still alive, but he's not going to ever wake up. You need to come say your goodbyes. He won't make it till the next day. So I associated that school and that class. I can't even go there to get my transcripts because it triggers me so much, because that's where I was in the middle of that classroom when I got that call saying this is it. And I had gotten hope because before someone dies, they get this spurt of energy. And so my dad was up, moving around, doing all this stuff. And so I had hope that things were going to get better and he was going to get out of the hospital. And he ended up dying, and so I didn't get to finish my degree. And so there are still ways to live vicariously through your dream, you guys. If you do not make your dream, it doesn't need to be forgotten. It can be put on hold. I'm just 41. I could live to be 100. I could still accomplish that dream. It's not over for me. Or I could become a probation officer, or I could become, I could be a substance abuse counselor and help people that are addicts, because I used to be an addict. So it's not over for me. The options are endless and the possibilities are real, you guys. And so sometimes we kind of hinder ourselves from being the best that we can be. And so who knows, from here, I still get to cover these true crime things on my channel, and I get to share it with other women that love true crime too, so we're not I feel like I'm not neurotypical. My mind doesn't think the same. I'm always wondering, what if there was, some kind of ulterior motive behind that? Or what if there's a crime going on there? Or I'm very suspect of everything, and it's just because of my fascination of true crime. And so I love having a community where you guys are into the same thing, and I just feel normal or neurotypical. I guess there's no such thing as normal. All right, so let's get on with it, because my son has a class at 2 and I don't want this live to last forever. Now, I have been in my lifetime around 6 confirmed murderers and 2 self-proclaimed murderers, okay? And what I mean by self-proclaimed is that these two people say that they murdered someone. They told me throughout the whole knowing them that they actually murdered someone and have gotten away with it. So that's even more bizarre than the people that have murdered and not got away with it that are sitting in prison right now. So you guys know my story, most of you. Plus, it's hard to have a dysfunctional family or ADHD. Yes, girl. Um, the I lost the ADHD. There you go. I already lost track of thought. So from 2 to 14, I was around my mom's killer. And we did not know that he had murdered before. He ended up spending 30 days in prison for the murder of his first wife in Colorado, you guys. He murdered my mom in Tulsa many years later, like I think it was 20 years later, because it was in 92. It was in the 70s. I don't know when in the 70s exactly, but in the 70s, his wife was murdered, the one he had before my mom, and they blamed it on Ted Bundy because they lived in Colorado. And so he spent 30 days in jail as the number one suspect, but because Ted Bundy was going around in Colorado killing people, and they couldn't really pin it on him. They didn't have enough evidence to convict him. They had to let him go, and it's still a cold case to this day, just like my mom. So his first wife's murder is a cold case, and his second wife's murder is a cold case. And so you guys are going to see me call the cold case department in my mom's case and explain that to them and let them figure out the two and see what they want to do from there, because they've never known that, because I didn't know that. I didn't know that he had killed his first wife, or that she was found raped and strangled in a field, and that he spent 30 days in prison for it, but they had to let him go. That's what my mom's family told me. My mom's family has always said that my stepdad killed my mom, and I have always said that too, but my mom's case is still a cold case, you guys. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to give them a call after the holidays so I'm not drudging up old wounds, and hopefully they won't tell me what they told me the last time. They told me that I had to pay to exhume her body so they could use new technology to figure out her cause of death, because her autopsy report says cause of death undetermined. And she was running up and down the street screaming for help at 2 a.m. in the morning while all of her children were gone. And she had already told a lot of people that she was afraid of him. He was molesting me, you guys, for 10 years. And so he told me many times that if I told, he would kill my mom. And so I think that she figured it out. I think she had confronted him because he had been kicked out. She was done with him. She just got approved for what's called HUD housing. And so she was not going back like she had all the other times. And so I think that she had found out that this was going on, because she had asked me multiple times, but as a kid, I was terrified and thought that she would be literally killed. And he did kill her. He did end up killing her. So this man, his liver is rotting away. He's an alcoholic. He's in his 60s. He's living in Tulsa. And if it's the last thing I do before he dies, I'm going to make sure that he is arrested and that there is some kind of vindication for my mom's murders. So and you guys will get to go through that process with me, because I started my YouTube channel and it gave me courage to be able to do this. And I'm not going to stop fighting. So, yes, it is time to dig, dig, dig. That's right. And that's why I did the whole ancestry thing. And I had his daughter, which is my sister, she's doing it as well. I didn't ask her to, but she is doing it as well. And so we can find out through the DNA test what the name of his previous marriage is, because it shows marriage certificates and everything. I know her first name and I know her last name became his, but I don't know what her maiden name is. So we will get through it, you guys. And that was just my childhood, okay? That's just my childhood until 14. At 14, he killed her, and I never saw him again. Never. Okay, he stayed in Oklahoma. I came to North Carolina where my dad was, and my sister stayed in Oklahoma because he was her dad, and that's how that went down. But she went into foster care. She wasn't even raised by him. He was such a piece of crap. So anyway, let's move on from Terry because that's a whole nother video on itself. And I have made a video. If you haven't watched it, it says, you won't silence me anymore, and I put his whole full name in there. And so if you want to go watch that video, it'll give you more details of my childhood and how that worked out. Yes, my grandparents knocked on every single one of the doors. When we were there, I got to see that at 14 years old. And the neighbors are the ones, Donna, that said that she was running up and down the street screaming for help at 2 a.m. and they called the police. Well, we lived right by the hospital. I don't know about you guys' states, but the hospitals are downtown in horrible, horrible neighborhoods. There were prostitutes, drug addicts everywhere, all over that street. And so my mom would not be running up and down the street screaming for help unless somebody was in her home. And the next door neighbors said they called the police. The police were supposed to come. Well, the neighbors came out at 7 a.m. to grab their newspaper, and they found, or 6 a.m., I can't remember, I'll have to look it back up. They found my mom laying dead on the front porch. So she didn't even make it back in the house. The police never came, and they called him again and said, well, hey, I called you here last night. She's laying dead on her front porch, or she's laying on her front porch, because they didn't know if she was dead or not. So then they came, they found her. She was dead. That was July 10th of 1992. I found out 2 days later because I was at church camp, and then I was swooshed off because my mom didn't have a will to my next of kin, which would have been my father, my real father, not my stepdad. And so he's gotten away with it. He's gotten away with molesting me for 10 years because in some states, the statutes of limitations is only 7 years. You only have 7 years to tell unless it's murder, but there is no statute of limitations on murder. So let's get him for my mom's murder, because I know he did both. And he can just rot away because of the molestation while he's rotting away because of the murder. And his parents gave him a house. Both of his parents died. They gave him a house, and he's sitting in this house that was given to him on disability and slowly dying. But that's not good enough for me. It's time for me to be able to confront him. I also thought about taking him on Dr. Phil or something like that, because they can look up all this information and see that I'm not lying and tell that it's true and help maybe dig up some of that. So that's another step. You guys will be on the phone with me when I call the cold case department for to get the ball rolling. And if they don't want to do anything, then we'll take it to Dr. Phil. So we will make sure that my mom, until the day I die, that my mom gets some kind of justice, that this fool messed with the wrong person, that my mom might have been a victim, but I'm not no victim no more, honey. So if you're watching, or if this gets to you, just know that I'm coming for you. All right. Legally and properly. And if I have my way, you will not be resting easy in that sweet house. My sister will get that house, and you will be resting easy in a 4x4. So okay, so that was from 2 to 14. That's Terry Leroy Duncan. Okay, that's his name, Terry Leroy Duncan. If you live in Tulsa, Oklahoma, you do not let this man around your children. Okay, I don't believe that this is something that you can change from. It's something that is inside of you that's dark. If you're a pedophile, you're always a pedophile. There are no reformed pedophiles. Okay, you heard that from me. I'll stand behind it. And if they're saying they're a reformed pedophile, you're an idiot for leaving your kid with them. All right, so then I came here to North Carolina and I enrolled in high school. This happened to me in 1992. It was the summer right before I went into high school, and I needed my mom. I needed her so much for high school. High school was hard. I didn't need her in middle school. I was too cool for my mom in middle school, but I needed her in high school, and I hated not having her there. And I met this guy in theater. Okay. And I have Asperger's, so I was socially awkward until I learned how to control it. And I would blurt my thoughts out. I would interrupt people all the time. I was kind of annoying, until I learned what was socially acceptable, how to make eye contact with people, because I didn't make eye contact either. And I didn't really have a lot of friends. And so the Misfits had told me in theater that you would be cool if you weren't a prep or something like that. You would be so cool if you weren't such a prep. And so I started wearing Doc Martens and dark clothes and trying to fit in. And the theater boys that I was in my theater class for 2 of the years that I was in high school, we'd all hang out right before theater, because it was right after lunch. And so our theater teacher would let us come down backstage. We'd go sneak outside and smoke cigarettes and go up on the catwalk to get away from everybody. And there is just a whole theater area where our class actually was. He had our class in the theater. We had a classroom in that same area, but it was just better being in these open seats in the auditorium. So we learned lots of crazy stuff during that time. I learned how to make myself pass out. You guys know, I don't know if any of you ever did it, where you breathe heavy real fast and you do that. I don't want to give anybody any information, so I'm not going to say the rest of it, but you know how to do it. Stupid, idiot thing to do. We're cutting off the oxygen to our brain, losing brain cells. We were morons, okay? But we were young and stupid. And so these 2 theater guys, Chasen and I think the other one's name was Gleason, or maybe that was Chasen's last name. But Chasen had a friend, and they were like buddies. They'd grown up together, and they were in this class together, and they were always cracking jokes. They were the class clowns and everything. Well, fast forward to, I was around Chasen from 14 to 16, so my freshman and sophomore years, and I didn't see him for a while. And when I came back to North Carolina from living in Colorado, I had heard that he had thought his wife was cheating on him, and he murdered her, you guys. He went in, he killed her, and then he disappeared. I just remember Facebook blowing up saying, has anyone seen Chasen? And all these messages saying, Chasen, come home. It's okay. We still love you. And all these people were pleading for him because he had killed her, and they had children together, you guys. And they were split up. They were estranged. And so he had killed her, and then he drove to some like dive bar an hour and a half away and was in the dive bar drinking. And that's when the police rolled up on him and took him to jail. Well, I've already told you that my brother is in and out of jail, right? And my ex-boyfriend, the heroin addict that I dated, is in and out of jail as well. Well, one of the times the heroin addict was in there, he goes, hey man, this dude just asked me about you the other day. He said you went to high school together and y'all were in drama class. And I was like, really? Who? And he said he murdered his wife. And I said, Chasen? And he said, yeah. I said, don't tell him any information. He said, he's in here for life. Come on now. I said, I don't care. That creeps me out. Do not give him my address, and do not talk about me to him. And so that was my experience. After I got away from my mom's murderer, I was in high school for 2 years. I dropped out and got my GED when I was 19. But I only went to high school for 2 years. And the 2 years I was there, I was around a murderer. So we will go on to the next one. Yes, only God is the one that can help them, Kesha. Let's see. Yes, exactly. A lot of people, you know what? And the hardest thing about the police is that I came to meet my real dad, who I'd only met like a couple of times throughout my life, and I was 14. And this man right here. and he was a police officer, and so I was mad at him and didn't want to have anything to do with him for a long time because he was a cop, because I was very mad at cops. But now I love them, and I know that not all of them are corrupt, and I got to see my dad's big heart, and I know that that's where mine came from. My dad was a police officer. My mom was a Sunday school teacher, you guys. I was supposed to be a stripper. Oh, okay, Miss T. I haven't checked my email in 2 days. Yes, drama teachers are the most awesomest. Okay, so that was the second murderer that I was around. The third murderer was, I was probably, let's see, I was pregnant with Abigail, so I was 19 years old, you guys, and I got a job at the disc jockey place, and I had worked at the Waffle House before, and just a couple of other places. But I was working in the mall, and I knew him from somewhere before that, but he came in and saw it was an old friend of mine. He was a little bit younger than me. He was one of those emo kids that always dressed in dark clothes, black hair, and so dyed his hair black. And so he came into the mall, and he was like, "Oh, I didn't know that you worked here. Do you want to go smoke after you get off?" Because I was an avid smoker, you guys, big time when I was younger. So I was like, sure, I would never turn down smoking with people. And yes, it's still illegal here, so I have to be very careful about what I say, even if it was years ago. So I said yes, and we smoked a few times. He hung out at the mall a lot, but come to find out, he was dating a girl that lived right by there, and he would come over there to get stuff for them or whatever. So we hung out for a while, and then all of a sudden I saw the news come on, and his name come across the news, and come to find out, this dude Lyle was dating this girl who had a 2-year-old kid, and I don't know what happened to him, but he ended up murdering her and the two-year-old. He murdered her in front of the 2-year-old, and then murdered the 2-year-old afterwards. And that happened in North Carolina, you guys. And it was just, I was only 16, 17, 18 when I knew Lyle. And he did it when I was 17 or 18. And I was just floored. I couldn't believe, oh my God, I've been alone with this cat smoking before, often hiding off on the side of the mall or anywhere else. And he literally killed these people. This is crazy. And it was him and another dude. And I don't know if drugs were involved. I was so young, I didn't research the case. I wasn't into researching cases, but I could look it up one day because it did happen right here. Thank you, Becca. Okay, so then after 18, I met this girl named Amanda. And I met her when I was 19 and she was 15. And I knew Amanda from 19 to 27, okay? And she was a gay girl, and I think she had a little bit of a crush on me, and because I was older or whatever. And so we all hung out, and me and my ex-husband were fighting in court over our kids. And the first time we went to court, and we weren't married yet, we were just going to court over custody. And he had tape recorded me, you guys, acting a fool. He had called and baited me and tape recorded me acting a fool, screaming at him, telling him this, that, and another. And so the judge gave him my kids. So keep that in mind whenever you are going through an ugly custody battle, that your significant other can call and not record what they say, get you so mad that you're going off on them, getting it off your chest, and they're just recording you, and a judge hears that. So you better remember that and be on your best behavior whenever you're in. They will try to get you out of your character. And that it never happened to me again after that. I made sure that if I was going through anything with anybody, that I acted right on my end. So, but yes, I lost custody. And so my best friend, Charlie Brown, who ended up being possibly murdered. We don't know about Charlie Brown. That's a whole nother story. That was my best friend my whole life. And he came and got me, took me out drinking, told me it was going to be okay. And we called Amanda and her girlfriend Athena, who I loved, who was the sweetest girl on the planet. And they came up and they started drinking with us. Well, they were underage. Me and Charlie were overage, but they were underage. And we were at Applebee's, and Applebee's was serving them drinks, you guys. Well, Charlie ends up getting so drunk, he leaves me. He just takes off. I've just lost my kids in court. I've got a buzz on, and he just takes off and leaves me there with Amanda and Athena. Well, they ask me where my car is, and I tell them where it's at. It's at my girlfriend's house. And so they take me to my girlfriend's house and drop me off. And their car was backfiring on the way there. So on the way there, I said, Athena, I don't think your car is going to get you guys all the way home. Why don't you take my car, go back to my house and spend the night at my house? It's closer. And you can come get me in the morning from Rachel's, which was my girlfriend's house. And so I handed the keys to Athena, and remember, I'm tipsy. I've been drinking all day. And next thing you know, I let them leave in my car, and they leave their backfiring car in the driveway. Well, next thing you know, 1 second after they're pulling out of the driveway, my girlfriend's like, your friend Amanda stole my cigarettes, and they smoked Newports. So I ran outside and I just stopped the car from leaving. And because I was upset she stole the cigarettes, I didn't register that Amanda was in the driver's seat, not Athena. I had given my keys to Athena and said, Athena, drive my car home. I never said Amanda, drive my car home, right? Keep that in mind. So she gives me the cigarettes back. I go inside. I wake up to Charlie Brown. Oh, that's my dad up there. I don't have a picture of Charlie Brown. I got to put Charlie Brown right next to my dad. He's my best friend that I think was murdered, but I have no proof. But anyway, I get the call from Charlie Brown, and he says, are you sitting down? And I'm like, yeah, I'm asleep. I just woke up. What's up? And he said, your car was totaled last night. That's what he opens up with. Your car was totaled last night. So I'm like, what? No. Oh my God. And he said, Athena was driving from where they dropped you off and hit a tree, and she is in Memorial Mission on life support right now. You need to come say goodbye. And I just lost it because I loved Athena. Amanda was like shady and sketchy, but Athena was priceless. She was like the sweetest girl on the planet, and she was only 20 years old. I think I was 27 at the time, something like that. Anyway, yeah, I was 27. So we go up to the hospital, and they're like, yeah, Athena was driving last night. I said, no, she wasn't. Athena was not driving. I said, I saw them pull out of my driveway last night, and Amanda was driving. And everyone in the room, her mom, the doctors, they were like, what? The police just let her leave and didn't give her a breathalyzer because Athena was in the passenger seat. And so what Amanda had done is drop me off. She left. She hit a tree on the way to my house and hurt Athena really bad in the passenger seat. And instead of calling the police, she moved Athena's body from the passenger seat to the driver's seat and then called the police. And so meanwhile, Athena is internally bleeding this whole time. You only have a certain amount of time to get somebody after an accident to surgery. And she even had a piece of the metal from the passenger seat stuck in her shin from where the tree had hit on her side. And Amanda pulled Athena so hard that it caused an injury in her shin that was consistent with what I was saying. They reenacted the cry or the accident, and they said that I was absolutely right, that there was no way Athena could be driving. And so that was the woman that loved her. Remember that too, you guys. When you think somebody loves you, they might not when it comes to saving their own butt. She did that to keep from getting a DUI, you guys, and she didn't. She didn't get a DUI. They would have breathalyzed her. They would have gave her a DUI, but they didn't think that she was driving. She did that to save her own butt. So you look at that person that you're sitting next to, and as much as they tell you that they love you, You weigh that out and make sure that they wouldn't, when it comes to a situation like that, that they wouldn't care less about your life to save their own from she was saving herself from criminal recourse and killed her girlfriend in the process, which is sick. That is just sick. So then she gets arrested and gets out on bond, and I get a phone call at 2:00 in the morning saying, how could you tell on me? How could you tell them? I'm going to prison for the rest of my life. How could you do that? And you know what? She only got like 5 years, you guys. It was vehicular manslaughter, and she only got 5 years. And when she got out, she kidnapped somebody else and put them in a trunk and tried to get money for them. And she made counterfeit money. So our system is really messed up, you guys. It really, really, really is messed up. So please don't have faith in it. It's wonderful when it does work out and when justice is served, but don't put all your eggs in the justice system. I'll tell you that right now. That's how come I have a backup plan for my stepdad. I'll call Dr. Phil if I have to. If the cold case department will not listen to me about him being married before and how both his wife ended up dead outside, and he was a suspect in his first wife's murder from what I've been told, and spent 30 days in jail. So they should be able to look that up. And if they can't help me, then I'll go to Dr. Phil, or I'll go somewhere where they can. All right. So after Amanda, I did get a good 4 years where I didn't have any murders in my life. From 27 to 31, there was not any murders in my life whatsoever. I was able to just be around no murderers. But then I hit 31, which was 10 years ago. And I was leaving my husband again. And I was staying in a motel room and working at Red Lobster in Littleton, Colorado. And at the end of the night, we would all go out to the bar that was right next to, somewhere in Littleton, right next to the Red Lobster. And we would all go out. It might even have been what is that? Chicago's place where there's video games. Well, anyway, we would all go to places like that. And Andrew and Coco were best friends. We called Coco because her name was Nicole Burns. And she was like the mom of Red Lobster. She wasn't that much older than us, but she was very nurturing and kind, and she knew what she was doing, and she liked to drink. So she had a really cool, down-to-earth side to her as well. Well, her best friend was Andrew, and he was bisexual, and he admitted to being bisexual. He was in love with this guy, actually, that didn't really treat him that great. And you could kind of tell that Coco was in love with Andrew. You know, she really went above and beyond for him. And so deep down inside, we all thought that Coco was in love with Andrew, but Andrew was gay and that it would never work out. But they were best friends. He was always at her house. She was always at his apartment, and they were looking to move in together. They both were getting ready to give up on their single bedroom apartments and find their own. Well, I got a call at my motel room on my day off, and Andrew said, can you go into work tomorrow to work for Nicole? She's going to go look at apartments with me. And I was so happy for him. I'm like, of course, yes. And the night before, he had offered to give me a ride back to my motel room, Andrew did. We were both standing there drunk, listening to one of our coworkers sing karaoke, and I put my arm around him, and we were going back and forth like that, just having a good time. And afterwards, he says, where are you going? I said, I'm going back to my motel. And he said, well, I can take you. And I knew he was drunk. And I knew what happened to Athena at that point, and I didn't want that to happen to me. So I said, no, I'll just take a taxi. Maybe you should too. So I took a taxi back to my room. And then the next day I didn't have to work. And he calls me and he, says, I had fun last night. Me and Nicole are going to look for apartments. Will you work for her tomorrow? And I did. I went to work, and then I had to work my shift that night. Okay. So I worked a double. I went and had a break in between. Well, that night the police showed up at work while we were all working. and they start taking people into a back room one at a time, and no one knows why they're there. No one says why they're there. The police tell each person as they leave the room not to tell anybody what they've been asked and to send the next person in. Well, my husband at the time was a plant manager. That's what we're going to say for now. He was a plant manager. Read between the lines, okay? We lived in Colorado, and he was deported for this, and he was a plant manager, okay? Horticulture. So I was afraid that that's what it was about, that he had just gotten in trouble. He was at home with the kids, and something happened with one of the houses, and we're in trouble, and they're asking them if they know anything about it. And I'm just freaking out on the inside, because people that have Asperger's, there's always a pending doom. You know, no matter how great your life is, there's some pending doom somehow that something's going to happen. Someone's going to crawl in your window. I mean, it's just constantly pending doom. So I thought that it was about me until my turn came. I go in the room and I sit down, and they say, do you know, how much do you know about Nicole and Andrew? And I'm like, Nicole loves Andrew. Andrew loves Nicole. They're best friends. They're getting ready to move in an apartment together. I was asked to work for her shift this morning. And they said, well, she's been found in Andrew's apartment, bludgeoned to death with a ball peen hammer. And Andrew is saying that he did it on whiskey and Ambien. That whiskey and Ambien made him do it. And Coco is dead, you guys. He did. And she was found at the front door like she was trying to get away from him. And he still to this day does not know what happened. He blacked out, he says, because he mixed whiskey and Ambien, and he woke up with her laying in a pool of blood in his apartment. And so instead of calling the police on himself, he calls his uncle and tells his uncle he's about to commit suicide. So his uncle comes over, gets the apartment manager to let him in, and that's when they found Nicole Burton's body and Andrew in the back waiting for them. And his defense to this day, I've researched it since, is that he didn't know what was happening, that it was a toxic cocktail of whiskey and Ambien. So that's nuts. So that was at 31. Okay. At 32 and 33 comes in my self-proclaimed murderers. Okay. My ex-husband got caught managing those plant managing. He got caught plant managing and got deported to, we fled to Puerto Vallarta, Mexico. So when we got to Puerto Vallarta, Mexico, you guys know my story about how he had been abusive for 6 years at that point, and my boss helped me get out, and I got my own place, and I was on my own ever since. Me and him have been split up ever since, you guys. I found my voice. I learned that I could do it on my own, and all of this was at 32 years old. Okay. And so I ended up, I don't know how, somewhere in the middle of Mexico, there was this young Puerto Rican who was only 25 years old. He was 7 years younger than me, and his name was Mario. And I don't want to say a whole lot about this, so I don't get him in trouble in case it is true, but I'll just put it like this. In Mexico, on the front page of the paper, they put the most horrific, gory, horrifying picture that they can. That's how they get you to buy the newspaper. They stand at every red light. They walk back and forth, let you see it in your window, and it's just like blood, mayhem, like if someone's internal organs are pulled out. I mean, you see everything. I already saw one of my coworkers from Timeshare. Since I got back from Mexico, on the front page of a paper, he was killed. I wasn't around his murderer, but I got to see his picture on the front page of the Mexico newspaper with just killed. I mean, it was pretty much opened up. I hate to say that, but that's how it happened, and that he had been murdered in Mexico. And this is another guy that I had been out drinking and hanging out with, and he ended up getting murdered. But he was very cocky, you guys. And so in Mexico, you got to you can't be just popping off at anybody and everybody, because you don't know who's who there. So he says, as we're driving to work, he had to leave one night, and I was like, no, you need to stay. And he swore he couldn't, and he had to go. Well, he called me at 2 a.m. and he came back to my house, and I had never seen him cry or anything, and he just broke down in my arms that night and was just crying. He said he couldn't talk about it, and he wouldn't talk about it, and that I didn't need to know. The less I knew, the better. So we went to work the next day, and when the newspaper came out, he ended up getting the newspaper, and he never did. And fast forward about 30 days, he finally breaks down and tells me that he did that. There were two people, two Canadians that had came into Mexico. They were trying to deal, and evidently he said that his people had him get rid of them, because you can't be American or Canadian selling in Mexico, because you're just asking for it. So that's what he said. He said that he was the hitman, and that's why he had to run from Puerto Rico, is because he was a hitman in Puerto Rico, and that he accidentally killed a police officer, and that he had to flee to here, and now he was doing work for people in Mexico. And I was just floored. Of course, I didn't believe him or anything like that. But once I got away from him and I moved back to the United States, I started thinking about it. And he did have a lot of money. And I don't know if it's true or not, but that's what he told me. And it scares the crap out of me. So I don't really like to think about it and give it too much clout, because that is terrifying. So next, that was my boyfriend. Okay, we got engaged and everything. We were engaged, and then I called off the engagement because it started bothering me that I did not want to marry this man that could murder people. If he was telling the truth, there's no way in hell I'm marrying you. So I called off the engagement. We didn't talk anymore. And I messaged my old roommate while I was in Mexico, which is Gage's father, and told him, hey, happy birthday. It was his birthday. Facebook told me it's Brant's birthday. And so I said happy birthday. And he sent me back a barrage of text messages saying that he's always had a crush on me, that he tried to take me out when we were younger and I just wasn't having it, that he tried to get me alone the night he took me out. And I told him, he asked if he could take me outside to talk to me. And I said, not if you're going to kiss me. So I can only imagine how much of a bia I was when I was younger, before I had time to self-reflect. So anyway, he asked me to come visit him in the United States, because I lived in Mexico, and I said sure. So I came to visit him. And then when I went back home, I had him come visit me. And I got pregnant. I got pregnant like within the first, like, or our second date, I got pregnant. The whole time I was with him in North Carolina, we didn't hook up. But when he came to visit me in Mexico, he stayed there for 2 weeks, and we did. And by the 2-week mark, right before he was leaving, I was pregnant. So, and it was starting to show on a pregnancy test. So I told him, I'm not staying here and having a baby in Mexico. We're getting out of here. We're leaving. I am not having a baby in a third world country. So I told my ex-husband that I was leaving Mexico, that I was pregnant, and he lost it. You know, this is my abuser, you guys. So he lost it and was trying everything in his power to not get me to go, and said that he even called like the airport and said that I had something on me, but we went a totally different direction than what he thought. And I left on a different day than what he thought. He thought I wasn't leaving until a week later, and I left in the middle of the night a week early. So we get back to North Carolina, and Gage's father proceeds to tell me that he's killed someone. that his ex-wife and him split up, and she started talking to this guy. And when they got back together, this guy kept stalking her and messing with her and scaring her. And he says, and his daughter says the same thing, and the wife says the same thing, the ex-wife. Everyone corroborates his story and says that he killed someone and buried them, killed that guy for stalking her. And that one is the one that I believe the least, but you never know if he's telling the truth or not. Geez, all I do when I take Ambien is cook 4-course meals in the middle of the night. That is hilarious. So, yeah, I don't know about that, but if he did, I wish he would get caught, because there's a lot about him that I found out later on that you guys don't even want to know about. So we're going to be done wasting any more breath on Gage's dad. Then we have at 30, yeah, the last one is at, oh no, I got two more. Second to the last one, oh no, that's only one more. I already told you guys about Andrew, Mario, Brant, Amanda, and which one am I missing? Oh, yes. Okay, so about 4 years ago, you guys, yes, plant manager. About 4 years ago, I was doing these events for Thrive. I was all about Thrive. Just call me Shanann. I was going up, setting up all this stuff, putting my shake boxes out, handing out samples to people that pass by, doing giveaways. I mean, I was promoting Thrive like a mad woman. And so I set up this huge tent at this festival, and I went by myself and couldn't get my tent up. You know, it was those pop-up tents that cover and they've got the 4 legs. Well, I couldn't get my tent up, and the people beside me were selling these metal crosses. Okay, let me go get the cross because I want to show you. Okay. So the young man, he had to be like 17, 18. He helps me set up my tent. I tell him thank you. All he did was see me struggling. I didn't even have to ask him. And he just came over and helped me set it up. Well, he was there with his mom. So I thought his mom was making these things. And then the mom's boyfriend came. And she said, "This is my boyfriend. This is my son." So I knew that that wasn't the kid's dad. Okay. So it was a boyfriend and girlfriend, and the girlfriend's son was at the event right next to me, and they made these. You see? They had these all over the place. I had my Thrive set up. They had these crosses set up. Okay. I bought it from him. The young man helped me, and then I go home. I bought that from them, talked to him a little bit. We were next to each other for 6 hours that day, maybe even 8. However, it was an all-day event. And so I go home, and I remember the girl's name because she said she had wanted to try Thrive. They had talked to me about Thrive. I got their information. I had them fill out a card that I had. If you were interested and you wanted to sample, I had these cards made up. So I had all their information, the address, the first and last name, everything, right? Because they wanted to sample. And the next night, this was on a Saturday. Well, on Sunday night, that young man that helped me put my tent up's picture shows up on the news, on the 6 o'clock news. And I'm like, what? I just met that little boy. And I told my family, they were all here. This is when my daughter lived here. I said, I bought this from him. I bought this from that boy. What did he do? This boy ends up stabbing his sister multiple times, then drags her body down to the dumpster, then calls the neighbor shows up at the neighbor's covered in blood, saying that something happened to his sister or people broke in or something. But yeah, that boy that sold me this cross and helped put my tent up ended up killing his sister. And she was deaf. She worked at the was it Old Navy? American Eagle. She worked at the American Eagle in our mall. She had overcome so many challenges health-wise. She had a boyfriend that loved her so much. I mean, she was just this sweet, sweet, sweet girl. And that young man, yes, I can. That young man seemed super sweet too. He was well-mannered, respectful. He didn't complain. He helped all day. And they were selling Amazing Grace crosses. Crazy. Okay, so then my best friend Charlie Brown, I've been best friends with him forever. Let me get his picture. Okay. This is Charlie Brown. So I guess it's going to be seven murders and 2 self-proclaimed, because I forgot about Charlie's murderer. Okay, let me tell y'all the story of Charlie's murderer. This is my best friend. He's been my best friend since I was 16 years old. I'm 41, and he just died on me like 3 years ago. Okay. Charlie Brown is his real name. Charlie Brown. And yes, he's gay. He was a gay hairdresser. So let me tell you about what happened to Charlie. And these people, I'm going to change their names because I don't need them coming to try to burn my house down or do anything crazy. And they don't know that I know. You see what I mean? They don't know. They think they've pulled the wool over my eyes. Okay, let me tell you. All right, so I met his cousin. We worked at a fish house together, like a fish restaurant, deep fried clams, all that stuff. So we worked together. We hit it off. Me and her hit it off hardcore. And then I ended up, I was always the person that had no parents. So I ended up having to live wherever I could when I was 16 years old. So Terry ended up letting me come stay with her. And then her parents got tired of us. And so Charlie ended up getting a place and letting us come stay with him. Well, me and Charlie hit it off immediately. Me and him became best friends. And Terry got jealous and she moved out. And so I already messed up and said names. Oops. Oh well. She moved out and she married. She married this man named Bay. We'll just call him Bay. Okay. T married this man named Bay, and she was Charlie Brown's cousin. And I fast forward to the day that Charlie dies. T and Bay end up losing their kids. They end up getting addicted to crack, to heroin, to all kinds of stuff. They live right up the street from Charlie Brown, okay? And then they get put on methadone. Well, I go to Charlie's house and he's telling me that he's getting the methadone from Terry, that he's on methadone too, that she's the one giving it to him. So I was worried about that, and he was just going through a lot of depression at the time, and I knew that Bay did dirt that he didn't want his wife, which was his cousin, to find out about. And so he would go to Charlie's house to do it. And Charlie's just a very sweet, kind person. He just wanted friends. He was a people pleaser. He just wanted to make everybody happy. And so he would probably let him come down there and do whatever he wanted. And so I get a call from Bay out of the blue when I'm at work. I'm bartending at Ruby Tuesdays, and I get a text message from him that says, I don't want to be the one to tell you this, but Charlie Brown is dead. And I said, what? What are you talking about? No, he's not. No, he's not dead. No. And his cousin should have been the one to send me that text messages. He's never spoke to me in a text message in my whole life. So that was my first red flag, that I'm being told by Bay that my best friend is dead. Okay. So I go straight to their house. I go straight to Bay and T's house, and I'm like, "What's up?" I'm getting ready to drive down to Charlie's because his house is only a few block down the road. And T tells me it's true that he is dead, and they start talking about stuff of his. He had these rings, he had a gun that they evidently gave him, and they're talking about how they want this and they want that, and I just couldn't believe that this was coming out of their mouth when Charlie hadn't even got cold yet. And so that was my second red flag. I'm like, man, something ain't right with these people. And Terry or Bay tells me before I leave to go see this for myself at Charlie Brown's house that I just went down there on Sunday and nobody answered. Well, Charlie Brown has a glass front door, and you can see the place where he was found through the front door. So if you went there on Sunday, you would have seen Charlie sitting on the couch, and you would have went in or called the police. So but I didn't know this yet. I didn't know how Charlie had been found. He just said, I went there on Sunday and no one answered the door. And I said, wow, that's odd. I said, do they know how long he's been dead for? And they didn't know any information. They just knew he was dead. So I got in my car, and with it running through my head that I couldn't believe they were talking about wanting his stuff. Like, that blew my mind. I was his best friend in the whole wide world, and I didn't want nothing of his. Okay. So I get down there, I see his mama, and I try to go up to her and hug her, and she is a wreck. She just tells me to get away from her, that her baby is gone, and she can't believe it. And as I was pulling into Charlie Brown's driveway, the ambulance was pulling out with his body. So I knew it. I knew it. And then when his mom did all that, I knew that he was gone. And his sister came down, and she started talking to me, and she said, we got in a big old fight with Charlie 5 days ago. And he told us never to come back down to his house. And they lived like a driveway split between each other, his mom and sister and him. And he told us not to come down or not to talk to him, that he was done with us. And we had a huge fight, and he went home. And so I didn't come down here until 5 days later. Well, Charlie's been dead for 5 days. So we didn't find my best friend in his home until 5 days after he died. So as soon as she told me that, I said, well, if he's been dead for 5 days, why didn't Gray tell anybody when he came down here? Oops, said his name again. Oh, well, forget it. It's fine. He needs justice too, so bring it. So I thought that was odd that Charlie had been dead for 5 days, but Gray made sure to tell me that he came down here. So that was the third red flag for Gray. Okay. So then I asked his mom a couple days later what we're going to do for his funeral. She said that she's going to get him cremated because she can't afford a funeral. And I said, what happened to the autopsy report? And she said that she couldn't stand the thought of her baby being cut up. And so she cremated him without getting an autopsy report. And so I had to suck that up. I was upset that that he wasn't going to find justice. We weren't going to find justice, and that his cause of death was cardiac arrest. Well, you guys, he was 42 years old. He was healthy as a horse. And we all know that drugs can cause cardiac arrest, correct? Correct. So the police tell us in that moment that the house looks like it's been cleaned up, that whatever happened, Charlie didn't have any drink laying around. He didn't have anything laying around, any snacks. Like, the house was way too clean, that the police thought. But since Charlie was a gay ex-drug dealer, he just sold marijuana, they didn't care. It was one less gay drug dealer in the world. They weren't going to investigate it. They wouldn't even help us get a search warrant to get his phone unlocked, because his phone would have had everything that we needed in it. But Apple won't do it for you unless there's a search warrant, and the police just didn't care. They did not care. All right. And so it gets creepier, you guys. All right. So I've got those 3 red flags. I'm sketched out about that. Then Charlie's mom sits me down and she says, listen, you need to stay away from Gray. And I said, I feel the same way. Oh my God, what? Yes, everybody needs to stay away from Gray. She says, because before Charlie died, he told me to stay away from him, that I didn't know what he was capable of. And so I don't think that Gray killed my friend Charlie. What I think happened is that they were all doing drugs and that Charlie started overdosing. And since he's an ex-convict and he was the one that brought the drugs, that he was afraid that he was going to get in trouble. And so he left him. I think he left him. And the reason why he told everybody that he came to Charlie's house on Sunday is because he knew that his car would be seen by neighbors. And he had to admit that. He had to openly admit that. And I think that that Sunday's when he went back to clean up the mess. Now, you guys think this is all speculation until I tell you my 4th red flag. At the memorial, a month later, we are all standing outside of Charlie Brown's house. I put together this huge memorial. So did his mom and his sister. I made a bunch of food. Everybody just came to celebrate Charlie's life. The lady that sung at my dad's funeral, Charlie had loved her. He said, when I die, I want her to sing at my funeral. It was like almost epic and prolific that he had said that, because he died like 2 years later. And so I had that lady come sing at his funeral. And we're all outside and everybody's in their little cliques, and we're standing around. There's probably 10 people in my clique, including Gray and Terry. So Gray all of a sudden bends down, and half of us are smoking cigarettes, the other half are vaping or whatever. And Gray bends down and he picks up a key. And you can tell it's a house key. It's a single house key all by itself. And instead of asking the 10 people around us in the circle, hey, did anyone drop this? He takes the key and he holds it up really high and he goes, hey, I think I found the key to Charlie's door. And he goes straight over and sticks it in Charlie's door, and it is the key to Charlie Brown's house. He gives it to his mom and pretends like he found it on the ground. Now, if he really found it on the ground, he would have picked it up and looked at the 10 people around and say, did someone drop a key? And he didn't. He grandstanded. He wanted everyone to see that he found that key on the ground. Okay, that was my 4th red flag. Let me give you my 5th and final flag. Then I will give you my last murderer. I started a clinic. You guys remember I said I took subs and then I got clean. I weaned myself off the subs. I wasn't on anything. And then I just told you all that I recently, the day after Thanksgiving, I went back in and got back in treatment just because I felt cravings and urges again to do oxys or Percocet, whatever you want to call it. And so I got put back on subs. So I'm back on subs, but I'm still sober, you guys. When you are not doing your drug of choice, you are sober. But I might not pee clean, but I'm sober. Whether you want to accept that or not, that's just the way that it is. So I'm walking out of the clinic and I see this guy in a car and he is just staring at me. And when guys do that, I don't give them the satisfaction of making eye contact. I will stare dead forward and not look at you when you're staring at me like that. I'm not going to give you any attention. So as I'm walking by the guy staring at me, I hear from the back seat of that guy's car, hey, I know her. And I turn around and I look down and it's Gray. And I'm like, oh, hey. He says, hey, what have you been doing? And I said, minding my own business. And he said, oh, okay. He said, you want some Xanax? I said, I take subs. That could kill me. And he said, oh, no, I won't hurt you. You know anyone that wants some? So Gray sits outside of Suboxone Clinic trying to sell people medicine, the worst medicine you can take on subs. Some people do it, but you are under the care of a doctor and it's very low milligrams. Your subs will be low and your milligrams of your Xanax will be low if you are prescribed the two together. And this fool is not only trying to kill me, but kill anyone and everyone that comes out of that clinic that buys Xanax from him. Crazy. And guess who Athena and Amanda were on their way to see? They were not going in the direction of my house. They were going to see Gray. When Amanda hit that tree and killed Athena, she was on her way to see Gray. Yeah. So I was listening to another creator the other night, and she said that she's been around 2 murderers in her life. I wish that I had only been around 2 murderers. Okay, my last and final one scares me the most, absolute most, because it involves my precious daughter. Okay. Let me get it together here before I tell this story, because this one, you can do what you want to me. I am resilient. I have been through hell and back. So if you can't murder my mother twice. So unless you're going to murder my mom for the second time, or maybe one of my children, you can't hurt me as bad as I've already been hurt. So I am resilient. But when you mess with my kids, that is definitely cutting deep. Thank you. Okay. And I'll go back and read you guys' comments as soon as I'm done with this. I just knew it was going to be a long one, and I want to, okay, I'm only at 1 hour and 9 minutes. Okay, good. Okay, this last one was just 3 years ago. When we moved in where we're at right now, my daughter started high school. Well, she was in her sophomore year but she went to the same high school all 4 years. And I made her ride the bus, my dad made me ride the bus, and I hated it, but it kept me from skipping school with my friends, and it kept me from smoking before I went to school. It was good for me. I hated it as a teenager, but it was good for me. So I made my daughter ride the bus. Okay. So there was this boy that I could tell was fond of her on the bus, because he would walk her home, and in the mornings he would walk down here to get her to go to where they had to go like 5 blocks up to catch the bus. The bus didn't go to house. They just went to one part of the neighborhood. So this boy was constantly coming over, and I one day got a bad vibe from him. I don't remember what he did, but something gave me a bad vibe, and I told my daughter that I didn't want him in the house anymore. That if he came down here, that they could talk on the front porch, but just something was off, and he hadn't really done anything, but it's my intuition by being around all these murderers, you guys. So I just felt something was off, and you guys need to trust your gut. Trust me. I can give you 100 stories of where my gut was right. And so trust your gut. That even if you think it's gas, it will help you more than it'll hurt you. Okay. So just trust your gut and get away. So my daughter started telling me that he was creeping her out too. And so by the grace of God, he moved away. But not before he gave her this book, and he had wrote in it how much he cared about her and that he wanted to be with her and da-da-da-da-da. And she showed me this book and everything. And I was like, well, good thing he's not here anymore. You're okay. Don't worry about it. So the news comes on probably about 1.5 years ago, and his name is on it. And he was working at this place where young people, I used to work there when I was younger. You can go work up on the parkway, you guys, and at this big resort, and you can actually live there while you're working there in the summer. And it ends in October when the leaves change. They close it up because it's on the parkway, and everybody tries to find a different job, and you can come back for the season. Well, he worked up there with this other girl that was deaf and couldn't hear. Another deaf girl, bless their souls. Oh, so he asked her to go on a hike, and she said yeah. And we don't know very many details, but because she was deaf, she couldn't hear him, and I think it was blunt force trauma and then strangulation. But that boy that had a crush on my daughter, that was infatuated with my daughter, ended up murdering a girl, and he is in prison right now. And the part that freaks me out the most, okay? Remember what Chasen did to me, you guys? I said that Chasen was asking about me to my ex-heroin addict boyfriend in prison when he went there. Well, guess what? Derek told my brother, who is in that same prison right now, that he dated my daughter, and he never did. He said, "Hey, your last name, are you related to Gabby Abshire?" And my brother said, "Yeah, that's my niece." And he goes, "Oh, I used to date her." And so the next time I talked to my brother on the phone, he said that guy said that he used to date Gabby, and I went off. I said, "That boy never dated Gabby. You tell him that he is a murderous liar." And oh, I was so mad, you guys. I was so mad. So I am just thankful by the grace of God that he didn't do to my baby what he did to that girl, and that I was smart enough to get a bad feeling from him. They would have been in this house alone. You know, that's what teenagers do, right? When parents leave, teenagers invite people over, whether you want it or not. And luckily, my daughter got a bad vibe from him too. So she always made sure that she said, "My mom said nobody can come in." So, whew. And that's it, y'all. That's all she wrote. Those were all the murderers that I have been around in my entire life. And I hope that finally, that the next 40 years, that everything is from natural causes and that I don't have to break bread, brush shoulders, or even share the same air as a murderer. I've been through enough. It's time to have normalcy and peace and just research murderers and just cover murderers, because we all have no idea when we are in the midst of one, because they're good. Every single one of these murderers, you guys, are good. They're good. They're convincing. They're manipulative. None of them look like monsters. None of them look like a murderer. None of them outwardly act like a murderer. No, I even loved some of them. Loved. So you can love a murderer. So you just be careful. Just trust your gut. Be hyper vigilant. People call it paranoid. I call it fully aware of my surroundings at all times. So if you want to call it paranoid, great. I'm paranoid. I'm paranoid as all get out. But I'm safe and I'm fully aware of my surroundings, and I can usually see something about to happen before it happens. So maybe paranoid's not so bad. But I love you guys, and I feel so much better. I'm telling you, getting it off your chest and talking about it is a relief. It's a release. And so if any of you have trauma that you want to share, even if you want to do it anonymously, you can type it all out, send it to me in an email, and I'll tell you when I'm going live about it. And you can be hiding out in the comments section. No one has to know it's your story. And I'll just share it. And then you can see all the comments flood in and what people would do in your situation and how proud of you they are and all of that. So if you want to share on this channel, you don't have to use your voice or face. You can be anonymous. I take anonymity very seriously. It is a high priority for me. And so I'm telling you, once you share it, it is like getting rid of it. It's healing. It's great. And maybe it doesn't work for all people. Maybe it's just people like me, but it is working amazing for me, you guys. It is emotionally vomiting, and it's never going to be in my tummy again. You see what I mean? It's great. So it's something that I highly recommend. Even if you write it out and don't read it to anyone, it helps. Trust me. All right. I love you guys. I'm going to get off here, read all the comments, put my links in. I didn't get to put all my links. I will have my PayPal link, my Mary Kay link, and my Rarity link down below. And we should be doing some discovery later on tonight, depending on how early my granddaughter goes to bed. All right. Much love and big hugs. Love you guys. Bye, girls. Bye. Bye, boys. Bye. Oh, wow. Mobe. God rest your daughter. Love it. Love that you were there for her like that. She's got a good mama. And good, he's where he deserves to be. Bye.